dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, cinco, seis. All right. The aim of a research project, my dear Hogan, is not to find new information. We already know that the German pilots are superior. Here, we are merely furnishing scientific evidence. The aim of cheating, my dear friend, is not to win. We already know that we are going to win. Here, we are merely hastening the inevitability. The point of election fraud is not to sway an election. The Democrats already know the Democrats are going to win. By committing election fraud, they just hasten the inevitable. These are ideas. And the thing is, ideas don't change. Cross time, cross history, the idea of something does not change. I'm Aurian Archive, and this is Chaos Theory. And we're showing off this concept. There's actually 3 locations in this game that I want to go to. Right now, I can only go to 2 of them, but I will talk about the third. So, first thing we'll do is find our fast transport. And we'll head to Pinewood. Now, the title tag, or at least should be in this stream, is that Cyberpunk 2077 is a game that deliberately pushes the envelope. It's intended to be unsettling. It's intended to get under your skin. It's intended to annoy you, to make you think about things that you'd rather not think about. One very early gig in the game. As you come up this building, and you make your way through this apartment complex, you're looking for some missing drugs. And out here, nice view, good look at the city. That's not the important part. The important part are the bloodstains left in the back of this room. The character who was sitting here was a war veteran. Abandoned after a debilitating injury. Left, or rather cast aside, unable to afford the medications he needed to live. He became a domestic terrorist. Now, I've only played this scenario out a couple of ways. Most of them I wind up getting into a fight with the character and have to gun him down in a run and gun fight. The other methods, I'm able to talk to him, and no matter what happens after I manage to sit him down and talk with him, he commits suicide. And this is a very damning take on how any number of countries treat their war veterans. It's something you hear in the United States of. There are veterans who fought in wars, who are homeless, who were kicked out. And the state, the government that hired them, that sent them off, does nothing to help them. The government does not build any infrastructure. The government does not make nuclear plant certifications easy to get. The government does not allow for private companies to easily produce power. The government forces investment in solar panels, which are long-term toxic to the environment, wind power, which is highly subjective into, well, whether or not it's even energy efficient at all. First of all, you have to be in an energy efficient area. And second of all, because the low frequency emissions of a wind turbine, it destroys local fauna and flora, as in it destroys animals and plants. And then there's the other things. Electrical power, yeah. Electrical car is great. 99% of the electrical cars on the road, the Teslas, the Chevy Volt, you know what they need for power? They need a coal-fired electric plant. That expensive electric car you bought, it's coal-powered. So the government, yeah, this is direct social commentary that sets players on edge. That this is supposed to get under your skin. This is the natural extrapolation of what happens when somebody is pushed to the limit. Is it going to be a violent confrontation, or do they really see no other way out than to commit suicide? All right, we'll move on to the next location. And so we'll head back to a fast terminal. Actually, we're going to hit another location before I go to where I want to be. Fast travel. And I want... Actually, I know how to look this up. I want map, queue, apartment, drop point. I want Ripper Duck. I gotta remember how to... We'll go back to fast travel. Okay, there's my apartment. Alright, we'll do it this way. So put me just south. There's Mega Building 10. Pretty sure. It's you. Okay, Misty's Esoterica. Now, for the most part, Cyberpunk 2077 takes place in what can best be described as a post-Christian or post-Judeo-Christian world. In this world, there is a heavy emphasis on the tarot. And Mitzi here, if you talk to her, has an interesting commentary on this. In this town, they've lost their spiritual connection. Now, that's an interesting statement because the player encounters this character very early on. They encounter this room, this shop. This is one of the first areas that a player will have relative freedom to explore, to look at. So let's go look at... Let's find a... Bradbury and Barn just to the north of me. And we'll go look at the... Now we'll head over to the docks. Alright, and I'm pretty sure I want to go this way. And here we are. Again, this is a very early gig that the player will run into. And when the player comes across this character, they make the observation that a monk with implants is unusual. And as you play through the storyline, you learn that this monk was captured by a group called Maelstrom and had these implants forcibly installed. Again, social commentary, but this is also a reflection on the Cyberpunk game. The Night City is based in a post-Judeo-Christian world. This is a world where the Democrats won. This is where the Democrats succeeded in every single objective. Now, there is more aggressive political commentary later on in this game. And one of the locations I would like to go to, but I can't yet, is a lake. Now, as you're playing through the game, actually, can I go back far enough? All right, there's a Nomad level 33. I should have where I want to go unlocked on this character. All right. Okay, need to go out here. I think that's where I want to go. I'm guessing this is the vehicle I was driving at the time. I know it'd probably be quicker to fast travel, but since I've had annoyances going that way, I need to go straight. Just driving in the rain, driving in the rain. And we are here. There was a fast travel point. Alright. The lake. Now we come to kind of the... Now we kind of come to the point of this little venture. I'm not sure if I can actually... I know where it is. We'll start from over there. I think I see what I'm looking for. Alright. When Cyberpunk 2077 first came out, a relatively large number of reviewers absolutely hated the game. They cited bugs with it, they cited play issues with it, just a never-ending things of Cyberpunk doesn't do this, Cyberpunk doesn't do that, blah, 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 blah. Alright, straight up, I played Cyberpunk to start with on, if I recall correctly, a Ryzen 1700X and a Radeon R9 290X. Okay, at the time of this game's launch, the R9 290X was already an aging graphics card to begin with. It was not new. It wasn't really capable of driving the game in any appreciable detail at the resolution of the monitor I had at the time. But for me, the game was largely playable. And I'd go so far as to say that, at least on the platform I had and the platform I was playing Cyberpunk on, the game was no worse, if not significantly better, than any game from the likes of Bethesda, Obsidian, or From Software. And the amount of bugs and glitches in various Bethesda games over the years, Skyrim, Fallout, from Software, the Dark Souls series, Elden Ring, from Obsidian, Fallout, Pillars of Eternity, those games have definitely not been bug-free. Developers will swear that their games are the most brilliant thing ever created up and down, swearing over and over about how great and how good this game is. It's not until you apply some fridge logic when you step back and go, this game actually sucks. And I'm really picking on From Software here, where this is really a subject for its own video, so we'll let that one go for now. But Cyberpunk got a lot of hate, and I couldn't, as a player, as a gamer, understand why. This was a new release game, a cutting edge game, and if you were trying to play it on an older platform, well, okay. Yes, CDPR got screwed over by a third party they had contracted to help with the game, who was understaffed and hiding that they were understaffed. And yes, there were some things that the Cyberpunk developers, CDPR, later developed and implemented that maybe they should have done from the start. There actually is a... If I go to settings, graphics, I now have a benchmark function. No, I do not want to go ahead and do that. And right now, yes, I do have dynamic resolution on with AMD's Fidelity Super Resolution. As of this point, Fidelity Super Resolution 2.0 has not been implemented, or at least not been implemented in the build I'm currently playing. So the performance could get even better on the graphics card I'm currently running on. But anyways, so I didn't get the hate. I didn't get why people were so upset about the broken bugs in Cyberpunk, because on an apples to apples comparison, Cyberpunk at least was playable to the end, or to an end, where other games of identical size and scope, if not larger size and scope, were completely unplayable from beginning to end. So, why was so much hate generated at it? And as I kept playing, this was really the point where it clicked that what CDPR had done is they had created a game that looked like Grand Theft Auto. In some ways, played like Grand Theft Auto. In some ways, it played like Fallout. In some ways, it played like another open world game, Rage. So in some ways, it played like Saints Row. But there was a key difference. Now, you can look at my Steam profile. I pretty much own all of the Grand Theft Auto games. And if you look at my playtime on some consoles, I definitely have played a significant amount of Grand Theft Auto, the most recent one. But I don't like Grand Theft Auto. I hate it. And I got into this with someone very recently where Grand Theft Auto makes a trivial mess of being a criminal. It glorifies being a criminal. It glorifies being a thug. It glorifies, it takes pleasure in having you do things that in real life would be considered atrocities. There's another game that does that, but I like very much, and that's Saints Row, specifically Saints Row the Third. And that's because Saints Row the Third understood that if you were going to have your player be a criminal, you need to go over the top. And Saints Row the Third delivered on this tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic, snarky beatdown of all the tropes that were in Grand Theft Auto. And I know some people say the first Saints Row was just a good. Some people say the second Saints Row was a better Grand Theft Auto than the Grand Theft Auto of the time, which I think was 4. May have uh, may have been Liberty City. But I wouldn't know because I had started with Grand Theft Auto 3. I'm sorry, I had started with Saints Row 3, so I had picked up Saints Row 2 after playing Saints Row 3, and the generational leap between games when Volition found their footing, figured out how they were going to make this game, how they were going to present the game, how they were going to construct the jokes. There's just a night and day difference. And the only reason why I'm not lumping Saints Row 4 in here with this is that Saints Row 4 added superpowers, which Felicia would go in to extrapolate in a love letter to City of Heroes. But Saints Row 4, because it introduced superpowers, it didn't require the player to learn or leverage the mechanics of the game. Once you had super speed, you really didn't need to bust a car. You didn't have to figure out this car is the correct car for this racetrack, this car is the correct car for this series of interactions. I need something with a tighter turning radius. I need something with a little bit more high lanes. Saints Row the Third did it is a masterclass. The launch version is a masterclass in how you construct a game to be a game and how you pitch a criminal game where you play the criminal and you make it funny. And Grand Theft Auto's not very good at that. And then there's Cyberpunk. Now, Cyberpunk, you can go and hijack other cars. But your own personal vehicle is literally a button press away no matter where you are. There is no need for the player to hijack another car unless they really want to. You can always call the vehicle that you want at any time that you want. Apparently, all of my perk points have been reset because of a patch. Oh, well, at least I wasn't going and doing anything. So there's that's little difference. You don't just pick up and play Cyberpunk like you play Grand Theft Auto. You don't just pick it up and play it like you would Fallout. Now, one of the things New Vegas did very, very well, and this is massive credit to Obsidian, is that New Vegas and its spiritual follow-up, what is it, The Outer World? I'm not sure I want to tap away because I'm not sure how this will react. Uh, I think it was the Outer Worlds. Obsidian's follow-up, their own space adventure, was very good at letting you role-play your character. If you wanted to be sneaky and hidey, you could be sneaky and hidey. There was always more than one way to accomplish an objective. You could fight it out, you could talk it out, you could sneak through it. And in a lot of ways, Cyberpunk takes that to the next level. Now, uh, there are some technical issues, in that if you are playing a sneaky character, you really want high technical ability and intelligence. You don't actually need to have that many slots in ninjutsu, but you also have to have a significant number of slots in body, because body is what helps you grapple an enemy. And there are some enemies that if you grapple them, they will break free very easily. And the best way to sneak through is to come up run. So you kind of have to have this confusing mix of, if you're going for a stealth character, you have to have high technical, high intelligence, high body, and lower reflexes and cool. And this seems counterintuitive because cool is where your ninjutsu and your stealth damage is at. And I see that they've also patched this, because now increased grapple duration by 1 second. So they have taken some of the emphasis out of body for grappling. Good to know. Obviously, I haven't played since 2021. So, anyways, my first playthrough of the game, this again, where I'm at now, is the point where it all clicked in my head, where I, as a player, understood the vitriol that was poured on this game. Now, I don't actually know if we can see it. Okay, we can see that there is a highway sunken underneath here. And I see that the bug is back of text. So let's see if I can clear that out by going to messages. No. Yeah, that's an annoying bug until I talk to some. Can I just call somebody to get rid of that? And nope. Okay, so that bug's still standing. Although that may be tied to the character. Alright. So there's a highway down here. I don't know if I can actually go deep enough to see what I want to see. But I think I see the outline of it. There's a hope I'm heading in the right direction. Stamina recharge. Alright. There it is. When I say that Cyberpunk is in a post-Judeo-Christian world, here is the perfect example of that. This is a Christian church that has been buried underwater. Crosses and everything. Now, when you are at this particular point in the game, the NPC that you are with, in a very quiet... Now, I have to set up the context here. The character who brings you out here is a potential love interest for your character. And while you're at, there's nothing, just you and the NPC. There's nothing to pay attention to except the conversation that's going on. In that moment, that quiet moment, when there's nothing else going on, the NPC, there's a question that's asked. And it's about the church. And it's about remembering one as a kid. And the question is a simple one. Did you ever go inside? Think about that for a second. Did you ever go inside? Now, I don't know that CDPR is a Christian developer. I don't know that they have Judeo-Christian values. But that's kind of a bombshell to just drop almost out of the middle of nowhere onto the players. When everything's quiet, when there's nothing else to do but to think about this singular line, did you ever go inside? Now, the player's answer is probably self-evident. You probably already know what the player's or the NPC's answer is, and since it's been so long, I forget who actually asked the question or who responded. But the response is, no, I didn't. Or something to that effect. So this is the we're looking at. The entire world is the result of the loss of the Christian church, is the loss of Judeo-Christian values. It's the secularization of government. It's these, and this is something I've gone over in other streams. Corporations are a socialist construct. And if you're not familiar with this, you can define this in terms of responsibility. Ask yourself two questions, or let me phrase this as two simple sentences. Capitalism is the ideology where those who control the means of production are responsible for the means of production. Socialism is the ideology where those who control the means of production are not responsible for the means of production. The entire point of corporations is to shield people who make decisions from the consequences of those decisions. Thus, corporations are a socialist construct. They are not a capitalist construct. There is no such thing as a capitalist corporation. There is a socialist corporation, and there is a socialist corporation that can practice a free market approach. But the ideology of a corporation is not capitalism. It is, in fact, completely in opposition to capitalism. So anytime you see somebody say corporate capitalist greed, you know one thing for certain. They have no idea what they're talking about. They couldn't pass an Economics 001. That's a class before Economics 101. They could not pass that class because they have no understanding of what the ideology actually means. What does the ideology result in? Well, welcome to Night City. It is the extrapolation of the ideology of what happens when you eject and bury the Judeo-Christian values, when you bury the church, when you bury the body of Christ. Like I said, I don't know that CDPR are Christians. But if they aren't, they made one of the most powerful messages for how important the Judeo-Christian beliefs, the idea of a creator, is to the successful progression of a nation, to the combating of a socialist ideology, that people should be held responsible, that people should take responsibility for what they do. It's kind of devastating, isn't it? And that's one of the key things, the key takeaways from Cyberpunk, is that it never quite lets you forget how horrible some of the things you are doing are. The bodies just don't go away. The bloodstains remain. The evidence of your actions echo throughout the city. Yeah, you can hijack a car, but then you have to watch an animation of your character pulling the NPC out, and then you have to hear them protest. It's not played for laughs. It's not voiced as a joke. It's not hardy har har, look at how powerful I am. And you don't have to do it. You can, but you don't have to. It's a very, very key difference in how everything is set up and presented. Now, I like Cyberpunk. I get that a lot of things in here are naturally abhorrent to me. The city is filled with imagery that's supposed to make you react in disgust. It's supposed, this is the dystopian nightmare. This is the reign of the socialists. This is the elites who sit atop their towers, dictating terms to everyone below them. And there's no judge or jury that can touch them, except you. This is also a very damning indictment of how people wind up feeling when faced with a socialist government, when they face the Democrats, when they face people who will never take responsibility for the destruction they have wreaked. What happens? What's the natural extrapolation? Eventually, somebody gets pushed over the edge. Eventually, people get pushed over the edge. Eventually, you form a resistance. People who will stand up. People who will say, no more. People who will say, we do not answer to you. And then what's the next step after that? You don't have to play Cyberpunk 2077 to know the answer. You don't have to play it all the way to the end. Now, actually, I do recommend playing the game. Yes, it's disturbing. Yes, it's unsettling. But this isn't supposed to be a pleasure cruise. This isn't supposed to be a laugh-a-minute trip through raw chaos. This is an object lesson in what the Democrats want to do to the United States, what the National Socialists did to Germany, what the Italian fascists, aka communists. I need to stress this here. If you are not familiar with etymology and the study of the root of words, then you probably don't know that fascist is derived from the Greek phakelos, which is to bundle. Fascism is literally a transliteration of communism, communal bundling, enforced communal bundling. Fascism is not been. It's always been a euphemism for communist. So anytime you call somebody who you say is a right-wing fascist, you're calling them a left-wing communist. They're not. All right. And while I'm on this is another little interesting tip here that I think I heard from Denise D'Souza. In that 2 years ago, we heard the term anti-fascist thrown around a lot. People were anti-fascist, anti-fascist, anti-fascist. But if you look through the English language, the word anti-fascist doesn't actually appear in the English language until roundabout it was being used against right-wing foundationalists. Now, why is that? Because anti-fascist is not an English word. It's a Russian word. In fact, it was put out by the Russian, and this is where you kind of have to be a student of World War II to understand that before World War II broke out, the National Socialists in Germany had contracted with the Russian Socialists, the Russian Communist Party, for oil reserves, for fuel, for supplies, for food. Germany was dependent on the production that Russia could offer. Keep in mind, this is before the USSR, but it's something a lot of people miss is that before the war broke out, the National Socialists were allies, or they considered themselves to be allies with 4 other important entities. First, the German National Socialist Party, the left-wing Socialist Party of Germany, were allies with the Russian Marxists. Second, they were also allies with the British Labour. Keep in mind that the British nobility was responsible for the practice of apartheid, the enforced segregation in Africa. That was something by the British in Germany admired that. They considered those British, the members of the British Party who backed apartheid, many of whom can be traced to the Labour branch or the Labour Party over time. Look at where people aligned and where they were at and where they said they were later in the terms of British government. So the British left-wing party of today is the same British left-wing party that the German National Socialists admired. We still got 2 more to go. And we'll deal with the next one is the Italian communists, the Italian fascists. Or derived from a Greek word as a romantic language to communicate the standing together, the enforced bundling together. Fakelos, to bundle, to stand together, to wrap up. Communism, enforced communal sharing. Fascism, enforced communal sharing. Yeah, a fascist dictator is just a socialist dictator. There's literally no difference between the words. All right, so who was the fourth? Who was the fourth political party? The U.S. Democrats. The German National Socialists applauded the segregation in the United States. They applauded the Southern Democrats' Jim Crow laws. They applauded the oppression of different minority groups. Yeah, the Democrats of today are the same Democrat Party that enforced racism. The same Democrat Party that pushed affirmative action, which is racism. If you have to hire someone based on how they look, not on the quality of their work, then you are hiring based on racism. It's just that simple. So the most evil people that we recognize in the world today, the German National Socialist Party, the Führer himself, Goering, just those monsters were socialists. The National Socialist Party turned to the right. They were always a left-wing party. Their allies were always a left-wing party. The German National Socialists didn't think they would have to invade Britain because they were sure that Britain would sign on as an ally. When Britain didn't, they were just as surprised as everyone else. And the Germans also had a contract with Russia. They fully expected that Russia would help them with their invasion. And then when they ran out of fuel and resources, they found themselves having to do the unthinkable, attack Russia to get fuel and resources. Yeah, we've seen that very recently with Russia having to attack Ukraine, and I'll come back to that in a minute. All right, so, and the last part on this bit is the National Socialists in Germany were certain that if war were to break out, if they were to start invasions, then the United States would come to their aid. And this is something the movie The Great Escape even brings this up. The Germans were convinced that the Americans could never partner with the British apartheid and saw the British as allies. They were convinced that when they went to war against Britain, that the United States, as a former colony, could never come to Britain's aid. And to some extent, Germany was right. It wasn't until another ally, the tyrant and the Emperor of Japan, launched an attack on U.S. soil, did the United States enter the World War. And if Japan had not attacked, then there's an even chance that the United States may have either stayed out of World War II or may have actually signed a deal with the National Socialists. So that's alternate histories to keep in mind, that one of the few reasons we actually wound up in a shooting war is because Japan couldn't keep their rockets in their pants. All right. So now that I'm through demolishing everything that your history professor lied to you about, let's keep going. because I want to bring this up to date on current events, because there's a channel that I watch really good work, but he recently did an opinion video where I found myself repeating two lines. The first line is from Serenity. I don't disagree with anything you said in particular, but we never would have left a man behind. Maybe that's why we lost. Captain Mao makes one of the deadliest comebacks, deadliest points, that his side had been losing side of the war that they were in. And that maybe ascribing to the practices of warfare had been, or the accepted practices of warfare, were why the browncoats had lost. And this is an interesting theory to keep in mind, that for the most part across history, there have been standards of how wars are to be fought and how prisoners are to be treated. There's even a Geneva Convention, and before that, a Geneva Conference, a decision process of how aspects of war are going to be addressed. You will not take this kind of action. You will not take that kind of action. You will treat your prisoners like this. You will not treat your prisoners like that. But prior to the Geneva Convention and the Geneva Conference, there was no telling how an opposite side may actually treat any particular combatant that they captured. And as we know in the aftermath of the Korean and Vietnam Wars, that even if there was a signatory to the Geneva Conference or the Geneva Convention, there still was no guarantee as to how the prisoners would be treated. And realizing that at some point you have to abandon the preconceptions of how a war is to be fought. That could be the key to winning. And we saw this with Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump went right under the heads of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon. Donald Trump, President Trump, went over to Afghanistan, went to the actual troops on the ground and asked them, how do we win? Not how do we fight this war, how do we win this war? And the way Trump tells it, he was told by the officers on the ground, the ones actually doing the fighting, that all we had to do was bomb them from the front, bomb them from the back, bomb them from the right, bomb them from the left, bomb them from the top, bomb them from below, bomb them on all sides, drive them back, and this can be wrapped up in a few weeks. Within weeks of Trump ordering the Joint Chiefs of Staff to follow the battle plan submitted by the officers on the ground, ISIS Caliphate was destroyed. And that was a turning point in U.S. military strategy. Because now it wasn't just the Joint Chief of Staff deciding how a war was going to be fought, how they wanted to fight. It was the Commander-in-Chief saying, we're winning this, shortest way possible. We don't want to fight. We don't want to have our guys over there dying needlessly. We're going to do what it takes to end this permanently, and then we're bringing everyone back. And guess what? It worked. Under Donald J. Trump, President Donald J. Trump, the United States had 4 years of starting no new wars, of discouraging wars, of getting hostile nations like North Korea to back down. So that's an important bit. I don't disagree with the liberal hive mind in his statement that the Democrats, the socialists, are warmongers. They want war. They want people dying, because the more people that die, the more people that get slaughtered and thrown upon the altar of socialism, the less people there are to fight back. The less people there are to vote no. The less people there are to be deputized as marshals and surround and arrest the Democrats for treason. Are we really come to that point? Oh, hell yes, we came to that point a year ago. We came to that point when Obama was in office. All right. And there was one other point that I wanted to make besides maybe that's why we lost. We didn't stand up and fight. We didn't say no when we needed to say no. But I can't remember what it is right now. And yeah, I probably should have taken down written notes. So yeah, just going to drive off into the rain. And there's something else that I did want to address in regard to Cyberpunk itself. And that it doesn't glorify the violence. It doesn't make a joke of it. It doesn't make it any less serious than it plausibly is. You have the options to render your weapons non-lethal. You have the options to take out your foes as non-lethally as possible. You don't have to turn everything into a slaughterfest. Yes, there are some enemies that you may kill, maybe not meaning to kill, where you killed them in the progress of the storyline, even if you took the non-lethal option. And yeah, that's something that maybe could be patched in, take a little bit more animation. But it's another key factor, I think, in why Cyberpunk got under people's skins, while it still gets under the narrative, while it's still so annoying. Because in this game, you can be the law-abiding citizen. You can be the one who does the job that the cops can't do. You can be the contractor who helps clean up the streets. That's kind of an important detail. Because you can be one thing in Cyberpunk that a lot of other games never let you be. You can be the superhero. You can be the person who's augmented to the gills, armored up, rocking the most powerful weapons available. You can be the one who says, stop. This ends here. It ends now. It ends this way. And that's something a lot of other games kind of in this genre have struggled with. Fallout 4, I'll pick on for a second. One of my biggest complaints in Fallout 4 is no matter how much work you do with the Minutemen, you cannot go before the Brotherhood of Steel and say, no, we're doing things my way, or I'm going to turn all my mortars on you and I'm going to turn you into ash. You don't have the option to go to the university to your son and say, okay, kid, listen up. Either you do things my way, or I'm having my army dig you out, and I guarantee you they can dig you out quicker than you can dig down. So, what you gonna do? But in Cyberpunk, you get that option all the time, where you're the one who can say, nope, we're doing this my way. We're gonna do it this way. I'm not giving you a choice. And that's a very distinct difference, and that Cyberpunk makes you feel empowered as the player. Now, sometimes you may realize you're outmatched, you're outgunned, and you really probably should have thought of some other way to approach whatever fight you got into. But the options are there. And this, again, I would strongly suggest that if you haven't played Cyberpunk, the best way to play this is not going to be on a console. The best way to play this is going to be on a PC. Now, I'm actually running on the good old games client to launch this. I haven't tested yet whether or not Cyberpunk runs on the Steam Deck. But trying to play a game like this with a controller, you're gonna, yes, you can make it work, but it's not ideal. And obviously, since I'm part of the reason I'm just toddling around the city now is I don't want to run the benchmark, so I'm kind of just running through load screens and seeing how well my system now handles this. Okay, and yeah, my system's not exactly top tier, but it's not groveling dead in the dirt either. So, take what I can get. Alright, that's really all I got for right now. So I'm going to cut this stream and probably start another one as I progress through the